We'll do it.
Well, if I had time, I would. I think I would have to.
You know,
Was the last thing I needed to be yelled at by the mayor on camera.
because I do that so often.
My job is to. I am doing all right. Thank you.
I'm Marie. I'm the deputy city.
Paul, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
How are you doing?
I'm okay, thank you.
My good friend of mine turns out lives 3 doors down.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, it is 6 o'clock, so I will call this meeting to order. First item on our agenda is public comment. This is your opportunity as a member of the public to bring something to our attention that may not be something that we've already talked about or that you'd like to talk about at a future meeting. Let me remind you that if there is something that you bring up that's not on our agenda, we wouldn't be able to discuss that tonight, but we can at a future date. It's 3 minutes. Please state your name and address. And who wants to go first, if anybody? Okay,
I'm Denise Kraus. Did you see my address?
yeah,
I live at 1654 West, 770 South. And we are here as residents to ask you to help with the parking in our cul-de-sac, that we get trouble with the road being blocked from high school students.
My name is Louis Honeycutt. It's my Carl Honeycutt. We're neighbors. We're at 1667 West, 770 South. And we're here for the same issue, just because it's unsafe for one, and then the mail lady can't bring up mail very easily. And I just saw a lot of issues. I believe one of our other neighbors emailed about it and brought up a bunch of points, but we can rehash them here as well. But we just wanted to come and voice our concern with that, just because it's a pretty big problem on our block. So we just want to see if there's some signage installed so that just between certain hours of the day there wasn't parking allowed there, because the various concerns that were brought forward. Dustin.
so we will be talking about that tonight because it's on our agenda. So
Sure,
you'll actually get some discussion tonight.
That's the first item, right?
It is, yeah.
Anyone else? Yes.
My name is Kevin Porter. I live at 1377 West, 1950 South. And I'm looking at building a home in the Legacy Park Estates. And the restrictions only allow, you have to have 30-foot setback. And I'm looking at a irregular shaped lot, which makes it even harder. I know that it's on the table to consider that to be 25 feet. And I went to the planning commission, and some of the commissioners were saying things like, well, if we keep it at 30 feet, then they can't put as expensive a homes, and that lets more people be able to have available to them less expensive homes. And I just don't think that's really constitutional. You should let the economics drive the price. I don't think the city should be involved with trying to regulate the price of a home by how much setback there is. I can't build the house I want on that lot because of, even if it were a square lot. But I called around to the other cities. Clearfield has as low as 20-foot setback for R16 and R18. And it's not to, you get to R19, which is 9,000 square feet. Do they go to 25 feet? And it's only when it's condominiums and large apartments that they do require 30 feet. Layton's is 25 feet. Even West Point has conditions where it can be 25 feet. So I'd like to see it be 20, but at least 25. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we will note your concerns. I will state for the record that we do have different setbacks in different zones as well. So we'll talk about that later. Anyone else? Seeing no other comments, I will close public comment. The first item on our agenda is discussion regarding parking issues at Syracuse High. I will start this off by saying that we have reached out to Syracuse High and we will reach out again. Their position in general is that their students are wonderful and would never do anything like as just been reported. But we heard that years ago as well, and we know that not every student is perfect. So we'll have to talk about this. Did you want to talk about the? Yeah.
So, yeah, our elected officials received some response from the community on this issue, and so staff's been able to go out and look at it and see what, some of the situations at least we see in the staff memo. There's information on what we do know. One thing we know is that the high school, they have a policy of charging a permit fee to park on campus. They also restrict permits so that sophomores aren't allowed to purchase a permit. And so sophomores can't park on campus. We've observed the parking situation over the last couple of weeks, and in the packet is kind of an outline of a typical day of what you would see. It appears that the east parking lot tends to have about 100 vacant parking spaces in it. The others are pretty much full. There is on-street parking, as you see down there, about 68 cars on a typical day. We also know that we've done since last spring. There's been a couple of enforcement actions, nothing really to speak of, but and then, as you know, HCA, which got approval for a medical facility just north of the high school, has been in contact with the high school about doing some shared parking on the north side when they build that facility, which should alleviate some of this problem in the long term. So, for today's discussion, we kind of want to look at those options that are in the memo. There are other options that we can come up with here, but it's mainly just to discuss possibilities and see where you want to go with that.
For those of you who are new council members, just to bring you up to speed, a few years back, there were citizens in other areas of the city just east of this that came to us and expressed a similar concern. We did, as a city, just choose to put up some no parking signs for a distance. I think that we were conscious that as more streets developed and more development happened, that there might be a need for more signs. So that's just the background of what's happened in the past. The other thing that wasn't mentioned is that while I'm excited that we were able to work out with HCA possibility of a future parking lot, we also know that development is going to take away on-street parking that has been used right now. So we don't know how much that trade-off is going to be.
So I think when I've been in touch with a few of the residents that reached out about it, and some of these pictures don't even do it justice. Like we got some pictures this morning from it, and they were significantly worse. And I guess
It was really bad for me.
yeah, and I guess the problem for me is that the school is not taking the onus of solving the problem. Where if kids are required to pay this $100 permit fee or whatever it is, and we can build as much space as possible to park there, but if they're not paying for it, it doesn't solve the problem. And that's again out of our ability. And so I think we have to work within what is within our ability. I don't know. I mean, we'll obviously continue conversations with the school district and need to, or in the school. I don't even know if that's a latent or just specific to this school policy, or if that's
Actually, I did check. So
Is that
most of
across?
the high schools have a permit, and it is similar. I heard ranging from $85 to even $120 within the
there wouldn't be
Vegas school
there wouldn't be a
district.
single kid parking at my high school.
I know.
What is
Like
the
ask
point
them
of
for
that?
insurance and registration. And then
When I was a kid, it was
And then why won't
$5.
you let this, I get it, why wouldn't they do it in order of seniority and let the sophomores get whatever?
So,
parking space?
I mean, this is out of
They
our,
don't have to,
it's out of our ability to deal, but I will say that it is consistent with other high schools.
yeah,
Some that choose to say we don't have enough parking for everyone also choose not to issue permits to sophomores. Again, we don't control any of
no.
that, so we have to just accept what they decide as far as that goes.
The other discussion I had with some of the neighbors was around the fact that they did indeed speak with enforcement a little bit more, but they, it didn't want to rise to the level of violating, youth who are just trying to get to school. And so it was kind of that discussion like, yeah, we can hold them accountable, but this isn't their problem to solve, right? They've got something that's outside of their control. So that being said, I would be in favor of doing more signage. I think you outlined some of the options in the packet. I think the option, let's see, scroll through.
Just as they did in the other.
But then what position does that put the students in? Now they're just
Well,
scrambling for
I
another
think
place
what
to
it does is
clog up the
it
street.
puts the school back
Yeah, so
on
it doesn't care.
online because, well, they'll have to if they end up with students who are getting tickets because we were absorbing their problem and now we'll send them back to the school and they'll have to do something to remedy that. Because if it does become an issue where every day you have, what did we say, 68 out there and they have 100 vacant spots in one of their lots, then that to me says there's a place that can be compensated and filled. And it doesn't need to be out on our streets. And if we return the problem back to the school, then they will have to remedy it because you can't have 68 kids getting a ticket every day or just having no way to get to school.
How far out are we gonna have to restrict parking though? Because where does it get to the point where they won't just go to the next?
Was actually pretty effective
Yeah.
on the street that's to the west that we did it for 3 years ago. It's actually, it doesn't go that
Didn't
far.
they move to the street now though?
They did, but I'm just saying like the
This
signs are not.
street, this street didn't exist.
Oh,
at the
okay,
time.
so when
That
there's a new
was-
street built, what's
Yeah,
gonna happen next? Like, we
it
can
did.
pretty much predict that now.
This one did?
Yeah, this is
It's
on,
Banbury and
this is Banbury and on the east side of Banbury.
Oh, I thought we.
Did this one always have a problem or did it just move?
the
Where's
new
the problem
street
with
was
that?
the 1830.
One thing that we do have to point out, though, and I'm not saying this is part of the solution or answer, but part of the problem is that when we did this before, we had the very next meeting from the side, the time signs went up, then we had people come in and complain that the rules don't just go for students, it goes to everybody. So if you
Yeah.
put up no parking
Even
signs,
residents?
even residents can't park on their street. They can park in their own driveways, but they can't park on the street if we are
Without-
restricted. We can't limit it to
Yeah.
just.
We ended up after
Get
that
some permits.
was a resident permit
Permit.
Yes.
system.
So that they can
Yeah.
give
Similar
it
to
to
what
the
they do by the
people.
Capitol. It's-
Like
I'm-
Oscar.
Yeah, well, back in the disease where we-
Weaver State.
So it
it's not a
basically
big
be
problem.
that if I'm a homeowner there, I can have a couple of
Parking will
permits
always
to
be a
give
problem.
to whoever is a guest in my home.
Unless the city just builds another parking.
I
lot
think
next
that's a
to it,
great
high school,
remedy
and
to
that's-
say that if you live there, that you can have access to your frontage. And
We both know I would.
And what that does too is it's kind of instills that there's a rule now in this area. And for an extended amount of time, it will be known that they don't park there. I do think that we're going to end up with students going to broach the subject with the school, as it should be. Or at least the parents of the students should be broaching the subject with the school and have us as maybe, a backup for what we've recognized in our study as staff.
Another thing that happens is that as the year progresses, we've seen over the last 2 years, more students become of age to drive and it becomes more of a problem. So
So it's kind of.
it always gets worse as the year goes on.
Where can we put a parking lot?
We don't own any land to do that, so it's not an option we have.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I guess, my thoughts are still just, we'll solve the problem we can solve and then put it back on the owner of the problem.
That's really all we can do.
Yeah, I mean, we can still talk, like the mayor said, we can talk with the school district or the high school. The residents can reach out to the high school directly. There's nothing wrong with that. They can talk to the school board. There's all kinds of avenues to talk with,
It'd probably be,
those who regulate this.
and it would probably make sense for our, who's our representative to, do you wanna, it would be good to bring that up. with-
We all know that's a good thing at the moment, right? Yes, I'll go over there.
Okay, but I mean, I've reached out to,
Well, I think
We
that's
have
the frustration
different
they
ways
felt as
to
well, where they reached out and were
Yeah,
told
they-
it's not our problem.
they,
Until it is.
Until it becomes again their problem.
So would we look to do something just similar to what, 1835 or?
Yeah, I would say that, yeah.
Yeah, that's where you're headed. We
Put
can,
the signs
a
up.
permit system.
I think the permits for the the landowners, the homeowners, they should be, and there should be signage that says you can't be here without a permit.
I would throw out one other consideration, and that would be that we probably ought to look at the area that this is a problem and designate it as a zone instead of a street.
And what
Because
next road's gonna be a problem next?
That way, well, that way, if there's changes, if like somebody says, okay, we're gonna remodel this street, or we're gonna, somebody comes in, then it doesn't just say, oh, now we have to update our ordinance
That's a good
to.
idea.
So I'm just thinking that we look at it as a zone within so many feet of, or
The
something like
school,
that.
the Park, yeah, that's a good idea.
We can look, we can go back and kind of come up with some details and then
So
report back to you.
is everybody feeling like a restricted zone is the solution? Because we can put something together for our voting meeting in October and then, okay.
Great.
All right, so it looks like we've kind of got consensus on a solution there, or proposal at least. Next is we have a presentation from the West Evans Corridor Land Use Study. Noah, who did you have?
So we have Rob Sant here,
Okay,
and then I
I'd like
can
to
give a
invite him up to
short briefing
share
if
with
you
us
like.
what that study has to offer.
Just share my screen here.
And just for the record, and those who are watching offline, would you introduce yourself really
Yeah,
quickly?
well,
sir?
so I'm Rob Sant. I am representing Lewis, Young, Robertson, and Birmingham. We're the main consultants for this study. And we also had two sub-consultants with us. We had MHTN Architect and Fair and Peers that helped us do this study. So a little background on the study before we get going. Go to the next slide, Noah. So before I was at Lewis Young, I spent 2 years as the Davis County Economic Development Director. And my first 6 months, I had a goal to visit every city. And as I had discussions with West Point, Syracuse, Layton, Kaysville, and Farmington, they all mentioned the West Davis corridor is an important economic development thing happening into their city, and that they wanted to maybe do a study on what some of those highest and best land uses would be for the interchange. So we all got together and decided, instead of doing individual studies, let's put a little bit of our money together and try to get a TLC grant from WFRC to help do that study. So that's what we did. And we were awarded a $160,000 grant to do this study. It's been, I think, about a year, almost 2 years now, so it's a long time coming. But the purpose of the study was to do a comprehensive review of the future interchange and what are the highest and best uses for land, just looking at it through a market lens, right? So not necessarily what's it zoned for, what's the general plan, but kind of looking at the market, looking at future jobs, looking at housing needs, what could the market support for each interchange? So that was the main goal of the study. So kind of the first thing I want to go over a little bit, and it's 37 slides and we have 30 minutes. So I'll kind of go through a lot of these so we can focus on really the meat of the study. That's the important thing, and then give you time to ask questions. So the first thing we kind of looked at is a snapshot of what Syracuse currently is and what it will be. So the first thing we looked at, one of the important demographics is population. You can see since 2000, there's been a big boom, and it's projected that that will continue. It's not in this presentation, but in the actual report, we have a land use map of where that development will be. And a lot of the development for the future is in these cities. So West Point, Syracuse, West Layton, Farmington, Kaysville. So we project that will continue to increase. Another one that we look at is kind of the household median adjusted gross income. Compared to the county and the state, Syracuse does very well. You're about, I think, $87,000. And the next page shows kind of a comparison, though, if you want to go to that next one, of how you look with all the cities in the state of Utah. So I would say there's maybe 2, 3, or 4 that are higher than Syracuse. So when it comes to a median adjusted gross income, Syracuse does very well with that. Then the next one we look at is the age distribution. So same thing, Syracuse is very young, especially compared to even the county and the state of Utah. Can't read that, so I'll be fine. But 26.9 is your average age in the city. So a young population, which when it comes to people looking to locate their workforce, that's a very good category that you have, is that young. And the next one shows also highly educated, where 49% of your population has a bachelor's degree or more. So then the next thing that we looked at for the market is the taxable sales. So this slide just kind of shows that and we looked at 2020 at the time. So 2020, you had as a city $334 million of gross taxable sales. And this next page shows, this is kind of a map of where those sales takes place. So the majority of those are along Antelope Drive. The bigger the color, the bigger the circle and the darker the circle, the higher the sale is. So right there along your main street and your town center is where a lot of those sales take place. This does account for some online sales too. So if you see some circles in some residential areas, that could be a very well-performing home business. So a great example of that is in Fruit Heights. We were doing a study there, and they had a really dark red circle, and they had a woman that was one of the top Spank sellers in the whole entire state. And so she was a big sales tax generator for the city. Yeah. And then this next page kind of shows what your sales leakage is. So this is an important thing as a council to note. This is what so we look at it at a per capita spending, so per population in the city and outside of as the state. And anything below 100% means that there are people that are leaving Syracuse and going to another city to make that sell. This is lumped into retail, industry, services, and other. We do have the information for more categories we could share if you would like to see that. But in total, as a city, you're capturing 40% of your sales. So there's a lot of room to grow when it comes to retail. I believe your main categories that you do really well in are general merchandise, right? Because you have Walmart. So, and then this next box is buying power. If you want to go back up real quick, Noah. The buying power, this is kind of shows that $166 million based off of population growth. That's how much more gross taxable sales you could have as a city, just based off of your population growth. So that means more revenue for the city potentially. Then we looked at the market data. So the first thing we looked at is kind of what competitive sites do we have in the county. And so this first one is the office market. You see that they're Farmington and kind of along that I-15 corridor. There is a little bit of office, but it's definitely something, as we did this study, that we noticed was lacking in the county. And then the next one is the industrial sites. So same thing, you have your Ninigret and your Freeport Center, Layton. A lot of cities have kind of their little individual industrial market sites, but there's definitely room to grow. Industrial is something that's performing well across the country. It wasn't really affected by the pandemic. And for the most part, you have a lot of developers that are building spec buildings and they're being leased right away. This next one is your competitive commercial or retail sites. A little more of competition in the county. This map's a little hard to read, but the green represents accommodation. As you can see, there's nothing in West Davis County for accommodation. And then you have neighborhood, regional retail, and entertainment. So while some exist, there's definitely room for more in the county. And I kind of briefly went over this, but these are kind of the trends that are happening in real estate. So the industrial market, as I mentioned, is strong along the Wasatch Front. The office market is improving, but it is still somewhat in flux because of the vacancies, because of the pandemic. That's something that hasn't really recuperated yet, but we do project, and the market's saying that will improve in the future. Retail market stabilizing, the vacancy rates are dropping, and retail trends are looking good. The retail market definitely has shifted as Amazon's kind of become everyone's go-to, but there are still people that you could see when we shared that sales tax leakage study that are shopping in your stores. And then residential. So Utah's currently experiencing some of the fastest population growth in the nation. In 2021, more than half of Utah's households can't afford a medium priced home. So that's a big issue that we all know we have. And we have lowest levels of available housing stock. And this is a little bit of old data, but in 2020, there were almost 7,500 more households than available household units. And that's just predicted to continue. So then the next thing we kind of did to say, okay, so what can the market support, is we did a location quotient analysis. And this is kind of shows you what industries are emerging based off of, are they competitive? Is there a lot of existing concentration locally or not? And what we want to have is you want to have kind of the growing and emerging categories. So on this next slide, this shows you what categories or what sectors are emerging or growing. So information, warehouse and storage, arts, entertainment, and recreation are emerging or growing. And then these other categories, subsectors, are emerging and growing. And why we did this is we wanted to kind of look and see what future jobs could be created in each of these industries. So this next slide kind of shows you that. And we looked at short-term job growth and long-term job growth, and determined in the office market, there's between now and 2040, there's projected to be an additional almost 18,500 jobs. And using industry standards of really how many employees you have per square foot, there's a need for 4.6 million square feet of office space, which translates to 424 acres. And that represents all of Davis and Weber County, right? Is that region. Then with the industrial market, 18,600 jobs, 37 million square feet, and 2,400 acres. Retail, about 22,000 jobs, 10.8 million square feet, and about 2,300 acres. And then this next one will probably surprise nobody. This is kind of the residential location quotient analysis. So we looked at the concentration of different types of units compared to Weber County, Salt Lake County. And you see, for the most part, every city does well with 1 unit, some with 2 unit, but anything above 2 unit, when it comes to that multifamily, there's low local concentration throughout the county. And then this next one shows what the demand, what that translates to. So in the next 40 years or next 20 years, we show that Davis County will need an additional 36,000 units of residential, and Syracuse will need about 3,800.
We
All right,
should say that
so-
louder so our citizens can hear.
So now to the good part. So the potential development. So Syracuse, you guys have 3 interchanges. So we called these interchanges nodes. And what we did is we looked at a buffer, a half-mile buffer around the interchange. This one's a little unique. It's not right over the interchange. Since this interchange is going to just tie into SR 193, we kind of moved that buffer area a little further east. And then also, since there's the church-owned property, we wanted to kind of expand it beyond that half mile so we could get that property as well. And so this next one kind of shows you what we think the supportable future development could be. And once again, this is just based off of the market. So we have 2 different things. We have an area of change, and then we also have what we identified as a potential long-term change, which would include the golf course, or maybe you have a current property owner that's not willing to sell or doesn't want to develop, but maybe let's say in 20 years, a new generation will want to. So that's what we kind of identified as maybe the potential long-term area of change.
And is that just identified within that specific node?
Yeah, each node will have that, correct. Yep. And then we also looked at there'll be easements and right-of-ways and roads. So then only a percentage of that area of change will be developable. So for this node, if you want to go to that next slide, Noah, 80%. So in total, we have 611 acres of developable acreage. And that is split between West Point and Syracuse for this node. And so what we're showing is about 95 acres of retail, or 503,000 square feet of retail, 57 acres of office or 381,000 square feet of medical office or different types of that office. 2.2 million square feet of industrial. This is, as Noah and Brody could say, when we had when I was at the county, a lot of RFIs from industrial users. This site was always on their short list of what they'd like in northern Utah. There's not a lot of substantial large swaths of land that's available for development. So this would be what we've identified as potential for a regional industrial park. And then 300 acres of residential or 2,400 units. This is just a couple of pictures that we threw together of what that development could look like. We're talking about pop-up flex space, major industrial users, kind of neighborhood, office, 2-story, and then all types of housing, single family to high density housing. And then MHTN, we just asked them to kind of, hey, put it on a map of what it could look like. We do want to reiterate, this is just through a market lens. So we're not asking you, hey, change your general plan, change your zoning to allow 20 units an acre. This is just what we think the market could support. So when we kind of wanted to put it on a map. So on this map, you have the yellow represents both single family and multifamily. The red is the retail usage, the blue is the office usage, and then the purple is the industrial usage. And then there's a kind of a black dash line that represents the border between West Point and Syracuse. And then the next page shows kind of what that translates to as a fiscal benefit. So for Syracuse, you're looking at for retail about $99 million of new taxable value, $71 million of new office value, $279 million of industrial, and $600 million of residential if it develops as we've shown. And then a potential jobs about 3,700, 3,600, and then the potential of about 8,800 new residents. And that's both Syracuse and West Point, not just for that one. But then the next table, this is the revenue that you would get as a city. So with property tax, sales tax, and franchise tax, the second column shows what your average annual revenue could be. So you're looking at about an additional $1 million of annual revenue. Then we looked at the whole planning horizon of 20 years, which translates to about $21 million. Second node. So we called this one the Syracuse Central
Is
node.
there an analysis of what that is going to generate in costs?
We could do that as well, but that wasn't, but yeah.
I'd be curious if those numbers are equate at all.
Yep. And then the Syracuse Central node. So this one is along Antelope Drive. And then you'll notice the two kind of area of permanence that we had at the time was the Glen Eagle Golf Course and the property just south of them. And it's noted, even though we did show that there could be development on the golf course, it's not planned. We just kind of wanted to see what that could be. So for this one, your area of change is 96 acres. And then your potential long-term change is about 150 acres. So your total area of change is 245. For this one, we anticipate a little less will be developable due to green space or other things like that. So in total, you have about 156 acres. For this one, we showed 54 acres of retail or about 855,000 square feet. For this one, we did note that there's an opportunity for a hotel to be located here, if that would be something that you're interested in to capture all that traffic coming and going from Antelope Island. So about 10 acres we've identified as accommodation or arts or 125,000 square feet. A small footprint for office of about 6 acres or 69,000 square feet, and then 511 units of residential. And the same thing, this kind of shows illustrations of what we're anticipating could be show in this node. And then the next page is just a diagram again that shows the different uses of office, retail, and residential. And then the final one, fiscal benefit first. So for this one, about $188 million for retail, 32 million for office, and then 128 million for residential. And you're looking at about 1,600 jobs and 1,950 new residents. And then for the average annual revenue, you're looking at 1.1 million. This one has more sales tax in it, so that's a little higher. That's why that figure is bigger, even though it's less acreage. And the total revenue over 20 years is about $24 million.
Do the build out times or the construction times differ on each one just because it's anticipated they'll?
Yeah, so we looked at kind of what was on the horizon, and all of them take place during that 20-year horizon. For this one, a lot of the uses that would be highlighted that could be on the Glen Eagle, those ones happen maybe year 16, year 17. And then the last one is the Syracuse South Node, which is right by Bluff Road and 2700 South. This one actually had a lot of already area permanence between parks, existing development. I think your public works is located out here and different things like that. And so for this one, really what we saw, this one would be heavily residential, just a little bit of office. And then when it comes to retail, we have about 22 acres of retail, 115,000 square feet. And what we've noticed out here is you have a little bit of a food desert when it comes to grocery stores. So this could be a good site for a grocery store that would service people in West Layton, West Syracuse, things like that. And then the next page shows the diagram. So same thing, you have a lot of residential. As you go up towards 2700 South, that's where you see what that grocery store footprint could look like. And then when we say office, we're talking about dermatologist, chiropractor, something like that. And then a lot of multifamily and homes as well. And then when it comes to the fiscal benefit there, same thing, you're looking at so $22 million for retail, 4 million for office, 145 million in residential, about a little more than 300 new jobs and 2,200 new residents, and average annual revenues of $511,000, or for 20 years, $10.2 million. So any questions?
We'll be talking about this more, council, so I don't feel like I have to get them all in, but really, any questions?
It's a lot of information. Yeah,
No, it's pretty
the
enamored.
study is about 125 pages. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we get a complete copy?
yeah, I believe Noah has that, but if not, I'll send it as well
The complete copy is here.
packet.
in the back.
Okay, I didn't realize.
And since it was 5
You
cities,
mentioned some stuff
Yeah.
that wasn't there, and I didn't, wasn't
Yeah.
on the pages.
since about it's 5 cities, a lot of it, the first 40 pages are just repeat for Syracuse, West Point when it comes to the demographics. But yeah,
All right, so I do, that is the complete. Okay.
Yeah, it's got the executive summary and then.
Yeah. All the things.
It's got the other cities.
and our goal is for you to use this study eventually as you make future land use decisions, right? They could be based maybe on market and different data points. So as you make future decisions.
So I didn't dig too much into Layton's, but I saw that they had like 99% capture rate on their.
Yeah, they do.
Wow.
I
Layton
was
does
like-
really well.
Oh, so was that, again, I didn't dig in too much, but was that across all the sectors? Was the 99% capture rate and average across?
So 99
Industry.
represents an average, yeah.
Okay.
So for them, when it
So
comes
they
to
have
their
some areas
retail
that were-
capture, I think they're 107%. So they're capturing more retail than they're leaking.
Yeah.
From us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going to them.
Well, they've got all the things.
Yeah.
you know,
they
so
Syracuse is not.
we're not gonna
Yeah.
have all the
Yeah,
things.
it would be
Yeah.
really, it's really hard for a city to capture 100%. You don't really see that ever. Unless you're like that where you have lots of car dealerships. Really, they have lots of everything and they do really well in certain categories, so a great example is in West Point. I think they're 27% maybe, but in food sales, which is Smith's, I think they're 432%. Because that number is just so high compared to their per capita.
Yeah,
Well,
and
and- Yeah.
I don't think the goal is necessarily to compete with them or outdo them. I think the goal is to identify where there's some strategic opportunities.
Correct.
We can benefit as well.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
what that data is good at, right? Is you
Yeah.
look and say, oh, we're actually capturing maybe 110% of general merchandise. So while Target's good, maybe we're better suited pursuing something that we're capturing. So a great example, I think, is actual sit-down food and beverage stores. That's something that there's more appetite for in Syracuse that could be supported by the leakage.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
I forgot you
Okay.
were there.
That's very helpful.
Of course.
Scared the crap out of me right there.
All right. Thank you very much.
Of course, yep.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Presta, our next item is a discussion of Founders Park improvements. Preston, Chad, would you join us up here?
So much
Chris is our
information. I was reading
recreation
that with 2 days ago. My kid was
department
like,
head
"Given
and
all this
assistant is Chad.
You're in Layton now, and I was like, oh.
Yep, this is, you guys know that I gave you the concept design that I forgot to upload. And Founders Park, Chad, when I put this memo and summation together and research, so I'm gonna have him present this.
Yeah, so as you guys have read, the Maverick that's currently being developed right there and built is the property line is not quite what it is or was about 6 months ago. It's kind of about 2 feet or so to the north, and so it comes into the park and is going to take out a portion of one of our irrigation lines, and it's going to take out a couple trees because of the excavation that's going to have to occur to put in that gravity wall. So when we were kind of meeting back and forth with the project foreman at Maverick, he just kind of was pointing these things out, and so Preston and I got together and just said, well, we might be able to capitalize on some of the things that Founders Park is lacking with this moment. And in our parks capital improvement plan, we have one item actually in fiscal year 24. So we were trying to put some things together. We also note that there are some trees in that park that are definitely on the tail end of their life. And we need to look into establishing a more defined area to plant some of these trees to create some great shade coverage for those spectators that fight over it at night. But with being able to capitalize with them removing some of the existing ground, putting in a concrete sidewalk that might increase the connectivity inside the park and allow a loop of some sort to add to that park that it's lacked. And we've always tried to figure out a way to do it, but it seems like it just never made sense and interrupted a lot of things that we had potential for in that park. So we kind of divided it to where we think would make most sense. And by doing that, it's going to disrupt not only the one lateral irrigation line, but it's going to also disrupt the main line that runs about 8 to 10 feet off of what we thought was our property line. So we would look into reallocating it and moving it to the east and kind of redoing some of the irrigation and getting it out away from a little more from the property line, especially if we were going to do a concrete walkway. And then we would also, while we're at it, moving that project of the backstops being need to be replaced up a year, because some of it lacks a mow strip and the fences just get mangled up and they fold upwards. So yeah, and so we were hoping, we've been trying to get those replaced for a while, but doing it now, the frame structure of those backstops are in really poor condition. And so if we could do it, have a lot better infrastructure, more secure, tied in with a concrete walkway. And if we can connect the south side of the park, especially the southwest side, up to the middle part and that middle parking lot on the west side of the property, we just think it's going to be great flow. We kind of realize that it could add some challenges maybe to our special events, but with that Maverick being there, it might kind of have to make us think outside the box anyway, because there's going to be some.
Can't
So
change everything.
We have to move those irrigation lines already, right?
Yeah, we don't have a choice.
We don't have a choice with
We
that. So
don't.
basically, the cost for what we're just adding to moving up is backstops and the
And the
concrete,
sidewalk.
the
And the
sidewalk, right?
sidewalk, yeah.
And that really makes sense.
But it's cheaper to engage one time instead of.
Yeah, instead of pulling it up again, yeah.
Coming
wanna
back
come
and
back.
doing it and.
2024, we don't want.
So will Maverick have a wall that goes all the way across that entirety to the corner?
So-
where the road comes through?
So I think it's just barely going through the final inspection side of it. The foreman I spoke to him just about an hour or two ago, and he said that it'll go all the way from that west corner, the southwest corner, to about 20 feet east of the Maverick. So I don't know how that's gonna tie in to, there's gonna be a fence that runs all the way across. But that wall is not gonna go all the way.
It sounds like it's gonna be just like the one on 193 way out east, right there on the north side of the road, when you're going towards the dump. It sounds, the way you're explaining it, their back wall right
Oh,
there
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
almost exactly just like what you explained.
And then it just grades kind of into
Yeah.
the.
Mhm. Yeah.
The park itself, okay, or the existing.
Yeah.
So,
I think with so we had this discussion
Makes it
a
cleaner.
few years ago in regards to what opportunities we have to make a park the preeminent feature of our sports opportunities. And because the park lawn didn't go successfully, this was our opportunity to make Founders Park that for at least the time being. And so I would support this because these are all improvements that are necessary. They're, just major improvements on there. So I think this is a no-brainer to me.
And this is, where is that extension of that parking lot going off of the Danbury Road?
The east.
It's to the east, so it's like right here, right?
That would. it's
So that's
off-
what we were talking about,
It's,
yeah.
it's here.
Okay, so that makes, yeah, that's what we thought
Clear
right
off
there,
this
yeah,
side.
so that kind of, like, yeah, it makes it way more clean, people will get around, okay,
Do you have a
seems logical,
budget estimate?
it's on there.
Yeah.
Oh.
yeah,
For the
yeah,
record.
yeah, no, absolutely. The,
Sorry.
People that don't have
Fair.
a packet.
yeah, the total budget estimate, we're working with Brian, it's about a little over $192,000 for the backstops, the concrete and the irrigation relocation of a lot of the infrastructure. About half of it will come out, is potential for impact fee, and is eligible for that. And then,
That's good.
yeah, the remaining, we could either go capital or use some of our RAP tax.
The RAP tax it looks like RAP tax wouldn't cover it by itself, right?
No.
We're still-
So it's like 15, almost,
18,000 of
yeah,
RAP
14 and a
taxes
half
available,
thousand,
So it'd leave about, yeah.
14 and a half thousand.
15.
What do we need to do with Memorial that's there?
That's
Will that have to be
homecoming
relocated?
coming up.
The what?
No, that doesn't.
Yeah,
oh,
Memorial-
yeah.
That's a great question, Jordan. I
Yeah,
think
it's kind of
that was another thing with the Maverick being there. We were thinking about relocating that more to it's kind of an undeveloped circle on the east side of the sports complex, the fourplex. There's a circle there that I feel like would be a great central location to put a flagpole and that monument for and keep it in that park. But that's definitely open to
Put a
some
tree there.
suggestions.
I would be open
I know,
to a
there's a
discussion
couple right there.
expanding that and making it a little more significant.
Right.
Because it's kind of a forgotten spot at this point, because it's not really developed.
There's a question, where were you saying that circle?
Oh, I'm
There's
sorry.
one that's
Yeah,
not
it's
here.
not on this.
Oh,
map.
okay.
It's-
Closer to the school. or-
So no, so you know where the fourplex is, the
I
four
know.
baseball fields?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's that east parking lot by the cell tower that the cell tower is at. So there's a circle there that is kind of our entrance into the fourplex.
Yeah.
That would be a decent spot.
It makes some sense too, because right now it almost seems like this is the entrance to the park and that's
Yeah.
not.
It's not gonna happen.
That's not gonna be
Yeah.
the case anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
If you wanted to use RAP tax, you'll see later in the agenda that our revenues are higher than budgeted. So there is enough RAP tax money to cover that.
Oh.
90.
To the other
Oh,
additional
That's
20
good. That's
without taking into account.
shy
whether-
15.
Yeah, I didn't put wrap tax out.
So
Oh,
just out of curiosity, for that memorial, I mean, can you describe the purpose of that memorial? What's it memorializing?
it was a dedication, the park is, I'm not sure where it came from, but Constitutional Park.
Yeah, I saw.
That little area.
Yeah, and they, there was a board that got together
Is it
and
the Lions or-
no, it wasn't the
I
Lions.
asked them about that. It's not.
Yeah.
In this case.
We have no idea.
Seems like something we should ask Mike.
It was the alien.
His name's on it.
Oh, is it?
So yeah, so I think he would know a lot about it. And so, yeah, they dedicated it as Constitutional Park.
But we've always called it Founders.
I'm
20
not
years I've
sure
been
where
here,
that
it's been Founders.
I wonder if we should
got lost.
get that sorted out.
That would
Before we do
that'd
anything,
be
figure
good.
out what the history of it is.
That would
Well,
be good.
I almost wonder if that would be a good fit for part of our cemetery expansion and put that in there, put a nice flagpole in the middle. It just
Like
seems to
move the
fit there as
whole-
well.
Move the whole thing, like the entire memorial to the cemetery instead.
We're already saying we're gonna move the whole thing. It's just a matter of where.
Well, I know that, but I thought it was still kind of standing apart.
I mean, I
That's
feel
an
like,
option.
yeah,
I'm not against it. I think the memorial and constitution should make sense in cemetery, but.
yeah, and the way that monument reads, I feel like it was kind of intended for the Constitutional Park and having a defining reason why with the description of why they dedicated it as Constitutional Park. So
We
it's
should
for
get a history of that,
yeah, it's
Sure.
there's definitely something behind it that I'm not entirely sure.
because you don't want to like just take something away that has like a strong
Yeah.
meaning or at least something up that's just like, did we really do this back then? You know, like.
But the
knowing
problem is
history
we
matters.
called it Founders Park for
It's hard to
ages, so
change
it's
the
hard
name.
to,
It's kind of like a walkway, you know, if you get a trail that goes somewhere and you say, that's not the path anymore, go over around here. You can't change it. People go right where they are.
It's
And
good to
that's kind of
know.
what's happened here. You could change the name of all of our parks, but there's some parks that maybe had a name at one point that nobody uses, and Trailside actually has a different name, but
We never.
it has
called
always been
the
Trailside.
Elementary park growing up. I mean, it was.
What
the
is
only
it now?
park. Founders.
Founders,
I mean,
yeah, and then
right. So it was
Constitution
always
Park.
just Syracuse Park. It was the only park we had growing up.
Shit.
I mean, there was no.
With the
other park.
amendment.
So yeah, I would like to look into that a little bit more, try and figure out a good place to have that memorial so that it's well recognized and does the
And people
purpose that it was
actually
designed for.
most people don't know that it's there.
I didn't know it was there either.
I mean,
until I saw
most
this.
of the thousands of park visitors, I would say very few actually know that it's there.
I was talking to one person a couple of weeks ago and I'm like, yeah, we could do something like that over at the Memorial of Founders. He's like, there's not a Memorial of Founders. I'm like, no, there really is.
there it is, it's in the corner.
In fact, every Halloween we decorate it with Halloween decorations.
I feel like this is a good idea and it's pretty much covered with drop tax stuff, so, we have to do half of it anyway, so we might as well just only cut it up once.
Okay, so this will be on the agenda for a vote in October. Can we talk about Stoker?
Yes.
No.
Moving on to spending more money. So Stoker Park, you guys know that we have discussed this in the sense of kind of like what Seth said, is we're trying to look through as Chad and I are going through here, of what we can do to maximize every single park, because we're not getting a regional park for a while. So with Stoker Park, you guys know that we ended up in this last budget, we have the tennis courts renovation, the parking lot renovation, which will go along with Public Works redoing that road also. We'll have the new pavilion, the new restroom, and irrigation improvements, and that's already in the budget for right now. However, when we put the cost estimate together with the concrete and all the stuff, obviously, it changed and it's gonna cost more money. So that's what option one is. That's what the only thing that we're doing. We're gonna move the restroom because, as you guys know, it's too far back. To make it more convenient, and also the pavilion, to make sure that the pavilion and the restroom are right next to each other, so we would take down the pavilion. The sidewalk and everything would stay the same. That would be option one.
Oh, that sidewalk we would just cover the restroom.
Yes, and so that would stay option one. But as I said, like Chad and I sitting down and saying, how can we make this more programmable, more usable? And that's where we came up with the option two, where we would remove the restroom, but also remove that sidewalk. And put that sidewalk, as you can see, it runs right by the tennis courts. Put turf over where the volleyball pit is. And also where the pavilion's at, which would make it room to be able to have two fields.
That'd be
to
awesome.
program, right? And then because the volleyball pit's in there, Chad actually had this great idea, because as he drive by Barnes Park, there's always people out there playing volleyball. And if you guys know around our parks, there's not a whole lot that actually play, like at Fremont, Canterbury. We do have quite a bit play at Centennial, but a big reason for that is there's no lights. There's no central location. So we thought it would be good. This could be a place where we could put 2 volleyball pits with lights. People are setting up volleyball nets in our tennis courts because they have lights. That's when they want to play. It's cooler. And
So I'm not crazy. I did see that.
You did.
Yeah.
I was like, are they playing volleyball on that tennis court?
Yes.
Are they really,
Yes.
won't that injure them? I would think.
It could.
That's cement. Like, I was like, I thought I was
I mean,
crazy.
there is hardcore volleyball.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't.
It only
they're-
hurts a
Okay.
yeah, it's more important to them to
Help protect
play.
the people.
It's more
All
important to
right,
them to
so
play.
I'm gonna throw this out there just because I would feel like if I didn't share this, I would be cheating you all. I just went to a lunch with the mayors of the whole county. And we were talking about updates and things that people had done to their parks specifically. And 8 out of the 15 mayors said that their city had just removed tennis courts for lack of use. And of course, turned them into pickleball courts. I'm not suggesting that because we do have people who play tennis. And I'm not saying we should just remove it, but it surprised me how many people say it's just lack of use. So that's at least a consideration. We've said for a long time, ours are lack of use because they're not in a condition.
Yeah.
They're not in a condition that's playable. But I just want you to feel what the county is saying, people around the county.
I would think to leave at least one, because we usually have 2, right? Side by side, 2
I
tennis
think you
courts.
can't have at least 2 because if you go and one's
You know what
in
I'm
use,
saying?
people, you gotta have at least 2 so that people feel like it's worth waiting in line.
Well, and remember, we had this conversation with, when we were designing the regional park.
Yeah,
That we would keep this at Stoker Park
Yeah.
and not put anything in the regional park, just so that there is an opportunity for people to play tennis. That'll be the only
that's the
place.
only thing.
Yeah.
But the high schools always have nice tennis courts.
And it's-
because
But they're-
it's-
Yeah, they're busy.
Yeah.
They're always busy. That's, yeah.
I get kicked off with it.
Yeah,
Quite a bit.
Yeah, you get one game and after that, winner or move on.
and I do think a lot of that our use is not getting used is because they're in
Not good.
disrepair
The parking
and the
lot.
lighting and the
That's like
parking.
most of them, though, like the horse arena. things
And we were
like that.
planning on doing
In
painting
different
the
times.
pickleball lines inside as well
Oh,
for
good.
multi-use.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So where on either option, it looks like it's gonna be the same thing. Are we going to the first court that's on the west side? Is that gonna be converted into the place where the bathrooms would be, or is that like salvageable concrete? Or does it just get taken out?
So which one are you
Does that
talking
make
about?
sense? So I guess it's in the first image in the packet. I see that.
No, it's, so
Oh,
it's,
the
Or sorry,
second-
wait,
they're actually asphalt,
um,
so they're gonna be
Moved.
removed.
they're just painted or something. Okay. got it. Hoping we could
I have. it.
save some.
Unfortunately.
I don't think you can ever really
I
save.
think we have to
concrete.
move the post-tension concrete if we wanted to last
Yeah.
longer.
Yeah.
Will it just be where the pavilion and the?
Yeah, and the other idea with the volleyball courts as well is because we can piggyback off of those east light poles and utilize the backside of those to shine and put light on the volleyball pits as well.
Which is a
And
big savings.
which
Yeah.
will help
Yeah.
out. And those poles are
Multi-purpose.
very expensive.
Well, I would always lean towards having more programmable space.
Yeah.
Just because that's our biggest deficiency right now, I think,
Yeah.
is programmable
Mhm.
action space.
In everything. Everybody's.
Well,
fighting over
anytime you can
cost.
do something all at the same time, you say.
Well, like you said, we really are looking at every park. And you brought up Founders again, and that's something that Chad Brody and Brian and myself were discussing, because we thought, well, we could put lights in this park with those 2 fields. But then we thought the best option would be to do that at Founders Park. So that's something that's gonna come down and you guys will bring that to you guys, so that we can utilize. Founders Park really is our community regional park until we get a regional park.
So Krista and Chad, do we use Stoker at all for sports right now?
The only
like
thing we
team
use it
sports?
for is football for practice. And we had to move one because there just wasn't the space, so.
And that's what I was wondering, like, so once we do this, would it open up, so is the parking gonna be a major, are we gonna need to put signs in that neighborhood too?
Maybe.
I mean,
Well,
it's
I think people don't usually park along there except
like
for at
for
school
mostly.
unless there's something going on in the park. And then we also have that parking we could utilize the school parking lot.
And just
'cause it's-
walk through on the
Uh-huh.
north side back down.
Yeah.
Make it
Turn.
fun.
The tables have turned.
Yes.
Isn't it always nice?
Hey,
when
school
it does
districts.
happen
Yeah.
often.
Yeah,
Which is pretty common though in most.
yeah, which is what we do for Syracuse Elementary.
Yeah.
Is and also Cook, we'll have some with that, but.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of the options that we wanted to discuss with you. And see which option you guys would like and would want to move forward with.
So we wouldn't put any lightings for flag, they don't use those in the evenings, flag football fields?
We
There-
do, but what
because it
we're,
says No light.
yeah, for here in this park right now, we would not want to do that. If we're
Okay.
gonna spend that kind of money, we want to put it at Founder's Park because that's
Because
where
that's
we're
where
gonna
we use most
utilize,
stuff.
yeah,
More
more.
Good thinking.
availability,
Look at
yeah,
you guys,
open
you're
space.
yeah.
But we can use if we end up doing this as programmable space, will we regret that we haven't put lighting there? Does that limit our
Just
use
because
of
of that?
the space and for
Football
recreation?
season is at that time.
I mean, we by adjusting these, it does allow for 2 5 football fields side by side, so I mean. It definitely is it makes it more.
Where the old
programmable and-
restroom is, right?
Yeah, where the old restroom is and the volleyball pit and the pavilion. Yeah, you can barely see them under the green lines.
Yeah,
I think it was an additional 200,000,
For the-
300,000 to put,
yeah.
to put in lights. Cause we looked at that. And when we were looking at an option to have lights, we would much prefer them at Founder's Park.
And we don't like the option of stubbing in preemptively because that hasn't worked in the past, right?
I mean, we could,
But I mean, just to save money, but get it kind of.
It hasn't really saved a lot.
It's kind of a very specific earmarking of funds
Yeah.
that way, isn't it? To where you're promising it for something.
Yeah.
Maybe we should look into that after we do our parks, so just specifically on lighting for
You bring
funding the
Light
lighting for the parks and future years to come.
we're also lighting up tennis courts and lighting up
Yeah.
volleyball.
Yeah.
And then it might be a little shock to the
Residual,
residents that
Light?
are right there. If you see.
Well, in all their backyards. are
Yeah,
that
right
part.
there, yeah.
So that was another
Their
thought. that,
Backyards.
you know,
What's the
Besides.
cost?
all the way around pretty much, well,
Yeah, you've
except
got the
out
school,
front.
school on the south, on the
So
north, and
we
then the
could-
parking on the south, but even that, your front yards are facing
The
that.
cost difference is about 492,000 between option 1 and option 2. I put that in there. so
And the
you can see.
capital project cost already planned for was.
Are they the fancy lights, the dimmer lights that dim at
Yeah,
like
we-
11 o'clock?
Yeah, they're
That way the neighbors aren't too mad,
Yep.
because I would be a mad neighbor.
And then for the option 2,
Nobody wants that.
it could come out of capital and also impact fee. But option 1, we wouldn't be able to take anything out of impact fee. And it could be capital or wrap tax, but if we're gonna go forward with Founders, we wouldn't be able to use wrap
Or either
tax.
275 or.
Yeah.
500.
Yeah.
Short.
Mhm.
So these options will be on the next budget for a vote. Don't have to vote tonight. Were there any more questions about understanding what we have? Okay, I'm gonna
Great use of space.
move us on. So
Thank you.
discussion regarding the fire department alerting system. Aaron, would you replace Krista on the hot seat?
Gladly.
He's the
I don't know
fire
if it's
guy.
quite hot.
He's used to heat.
We have talked to this, or talked to this point a few times, updating our system so that we'd be prepared for modernization. So
I'll stop sharing. tonight. Start.
I feel like we were kind of in agreement on this one for the most part, so.
Have you been over there to the
Yeah.
fire department when they send calls in? It's like, if Miss Shar gets a call and then she tells them to call 911 and then they call 911, how long it takes to get there, but they already send the department rolling to head that way before the call even comes in, if she gets it first. Yeah, it's a
Okay,
big deal.
well,
It is a big deal, yeah.
take a look because this is as impressive as this PowerPoint gets. This is it. This is it, because it's all, this is it.
Krista, what was your information?
Okay. Okay, so I know we've discussed this already, and it's the station alerting system. for those that are new to the council, a little bit of history. The state has changed the radio systems, gone to a P25 system, and in 2018, I believe, we changed all of our radios over to that. At the time, we didn't change the station over because there's still a lot of up in the air, didn't know what was going on with the station. So our station alerting system is still analog based. It is not digital. That is a picture of our current system as it sits right now. Currently, the way dispatch alerts us is they get the 911 call, they put the information into their CAD system, into the Spillman CAD system. That information comes back and recommends units to send. Then they go to a different console or a different type of I guess a machine of some sorts to alert each station or to alert us as units. So it takes, and it also uses a two-tone system. I do have a sample of a two-tone system in there. It's a little annoying, but I've dealt with that for quite a few years of my career. But anyway, it's a two-tone system that sends the message and alerts the station through the radio that you see in there, and then it turns the lights on and does what it needs to do. So there is a need for an upgrade because of the P25 radio system. It's unsure how our current system is going to work with it. So Davis County Dispatch currently is on the analog dispatching system. They are looking at having their P25 upgrade completed by the end of the year. However, they said that they're going to continue to dispatch on the analog system to allow agencies to make that transition. So for us to ensure any station alerting continuity and not fall into any kind of unknown issues, we need to look at upgrading. All of the county fire departments are upgrading. Layton City is already converted, and South Davis Metro, North Davis Fire, and South Weaver Fire have already have been approved, and they're in the process. And everybody else, all the other cities are kind of in the process we're in right now. So this is a quick little video. I was hoping that this would have come over in the packet so that you guys could watch it, but I'll just share it with you. It's not a very long video. But this kind of shows
responding to an emergency call, every second matters. But today, most first responders are using outdated technology that slows them down. Introducing the Phoenix G2 Fire Station Alerting System, the most reputable, state-of-the-art automated dispatch system that's with you before, during, and after the call. G2 FSA is also the most reliable and secure FSA system available, with typical uptimes over 2 years without a single reboot. Tested and trusted by thousands of fire stations around the world, Phoenix G2 equips first responders with fast, accurate information so that they can confidently respond to emergencies faster and with better situational awareness. The Phoenix G2 system is fast because the process is simple. When information is entered into the CAD system by the call taker, it is instantly relayed to the Phoenix G2 Communications Gateway. In a split second after the dispatch hits the gateway, every appropriate device, unit, station, radio, and firefighter is alerted immediately. Alerts will appear in the station common areas, dorm rooms, and on mobile devices equipped with the Phoenix G2 Fire Station Alerting System app. Your staff hears the dispatch data loud and clear every time with our visual and audio alert systems, featuring easy-to-understand automated voice alerts that are never distorted, always in a calm, consistent voice that never changes. The Phoenix G2 Fire Station Alerting System was designed with the health and cardiac wellness of first responders in mind. Using ramping tones that gradually increase in volume and intensity, the Phoenix G2 system features zoned alerting to the rooms of relevant personnel without disturbing ones that are inactive or sleeping, resulting in a more rested, more relaxed, more aware, and more responsive team. Additionally, the Phoenix G2 mobile app delivers a simple, easy-to-use interface, providing a third redundant means of fast, accurate information directly to the palm of their hand or wrist. With the app's personal alerting notifications and multiple mapping abilities, the exact unit, call type, and location of the incident can be available as soon as the CAD dispatch is received, improving situational awareness and efficiency in or out of quarters. And from day one, our expert support team will have your back before, during, and after incidents occur. It's time to find out for yourself why Phoenix G2 is trusted by hundreds of public safety agencies in the US and around the world to reduce response times, increase situational awareness, and improve health and wellness. Because when saving time means saving lives, your responders and the community you protect need every extra second. Get a clearer picture faster with the Phoenix G2 Fire Station. When responding to an
Okay, we don't want to watch that. So as you can see, some of the changes with this system. Well, let me back up. Our current system, there are flaws in it, of course. Anything analog, anything that has more of a human factor to it, there's always those mistakes. And sometimes it can take upwards of a minute from the time the call comes in until the time we're actually dispatched. Not all the times, but it can happen. This new system is all digital. As soon as the dispatcher puts the information in the CAD system, it automatically picks it and sends it to us in seconds. So we're already able to move towards the door and out the door when this happens. So this next video, this is not very long at all, and I'll stop it partially way through, but this is just showing what it would sound like in the station. It's all computer generated. It also helps our dispatch center and our dispatchers because they're now allowed to stay on the phone with somebody, do some other work there.
Engine 25, ladder 25. Structure fire. 1930 Bandera Road. An alpha response. Channel 5. Timeout, 12:21. Engine 25, ladder 25. Structure fire. 1930 Bandera Road. An alpha response. Channel 5. Timeout, 12:21. Engine 25, ladder 25. Structure fire. 9.
Okay, we'll stop because it repeats it several times, but one of the benefits to this is that it'll definitely reduce dispatch notification time. Because the steps, we take out multiple steps in the process. The other thing with this program is that they're creating a VHF backup system. So right now, if our dispatch, if the Spillman Center went down or dispatch went down, there's no way for us to be notified without either monitoring the radio or them calling us by phone. So there's not a lot of redundancy in the system, but it's also a system that's older than 40 years old. So, so this one here, I'll have a VHF backup system. So if there is an issue, this digital paging system will be able to page right through the VHF radio system. So it's got some redundancy, which is nice. It comes with the station controller, which will turn on the station lights. That's nothing new. That's what we have now. But it will also shut off the stove and the grill. So it'll shut off all the gas. So if they're in the middle of cooking or something like that.
That's convenient. Haven't firehouses caught fire because of those?
Not ours.
There
has
because
been.
they ran out and left the stove on.
Yeah, there has been fires because of that.
Yeah.
The other thing are the ramping heart safe alert tones. They gradually ramp. Each room is individually controlled. So if there's somebody that kind of sleeps a little bit harder, they can turn it up a little bit louder, or they can adjust the level of lighting that comes on and the whole bit. So it's a nice system.
Sounds like a sunrise alarm clock. I live by those. It's great. Yeah, it's a good system to have.
So we've got some costs here. These are the costs from the bid that we've received. There are shared costs. It's quite an expensive for them to purchase the brain, the server. It's quite expensive. Layton City purchased a server, and the server that they have has the capability of handling the entire county plus some. So instead of everybody, each dispatch center buying their own server, Layton City has graciously allowed all the other dispatch centers to share with the VHF and the shared server costs. So that's the one-time cost you see there with that.
Is there any risk of having a system that's dependent on another city? I mean, not having a redundancy somewhere in the county that's not in the Layton system?
As far as the server goes. So if the server goes down, then we have the ability to go to the VHF system. So it'd be no different than having a server at the dispatch at Davis County.
But I mean,
Dispatch.
most systems similar to this would have like a redundant server at an off-site location.
Right.
And that's what I would think is that maybe somewhere. not in the
Power wise.
Well, not just power wise, but also,
Any number.
yeah, there's any number of things that, but let's say that there was in the latent system, there was a problem that there should be a redundancy to flip over to somebody somewhere else in the county.
Right. Right now, there isn't redundancy as it sits right now. So what we're getting is something that is better. As far as the whole IT side of it, I
Okay.
put fires out.
Sorry,
I
that's
don't
my
know.
side of it.
I appreciate it.
That's my side,
wish I
so
could
that's where
answer.
I asked my questions.
No, I wish I could answer. I feel confident that the system, there's been a lot of work on it. And I feel confident that this will be much better than we have.
So the question I'd ask you to take back is maybe it even could be a cloud system of some sort where redundancy, there's a hard system here, but there's maybe a cloud redundancy because
There is.
like we used to do a lot of systems where you have like critical first responder, like 4, you'd maybe have
Right.
on another coast.
So what would they have now? They don't.
They don't because it's analog, because it actually has to be a physical wire. So, but if you had a cloud redundancy, then it could be in another state. And if there was a major disaster here, you could maybe get a Wi-Fi in of a redundancy.
I believe there is cloud and there's also a Cradle Point
Okay,
that is part of this as well. So I would have to dig into that.
you just want to be backed up somewhere
Yeah.
and we can look at the details. I can
Absolutely.
look at that.
This is like a nationwide thing too, right? I remember.
The P25 is.
We've talked about this quite a bit, because as soon as I was elected, one of the first things my father asked me is, has your fire department and emergency services switched over from analog? And I was like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
So I went and asked, he's like, it's gonna be expensive. So I've been expecting this the whole time. He does, he's like, it's gonna be expensive. And I'm like, okay, Dad, thanks. But, no,
No.
but yeah, but we've talked a lot about this just because of that.
Well, and I feel fortunate because of course, I came here in 2017, the end of 2017, and Sergeant Carter and the police department had already started all the legwork
Yeah.
for the radios and the transition to the radios and all the mobiles and the handhelds, and that's all been completed.
Yeah.
So that was a big chunk. And so I was fortunate to walk in and they had already had begun that. So anyway, the rest of these costs here, so we're looking at about 131,000 for the one-time costs. There are some ongoing costs of about $2,100, and that's for system maintenance, licensing,
For
stuff
a
like that.
system this size, that's pretty small.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
It is a shared cost.
Membership.
Yeah, it's a shared cost by each city, so.
But that's a
how
pretty
quick
small
would
cost
they-
relative to what other
What it
systems
does.
like it costs. So.
Right.
How quickly do they get you online if we move forward?
Well, they were saying it's about 7 weeks. The last time I talked to them.
That's not
so-
too bad.
No, it was about 6 weeks and that might push back a little bit further because they've got other stations other departments that are coming on. So the quicker we can jump in, the faster we get into the queue. This quote here is, I received it on September 12th and it is valid for 90 days. So.
Well,
So
you know,
this is
we've
the
talked
current
about this
quote then, yeah.
before, and I think that there's pretty much a universal feeling
knew it
that
was coming.
Yeah.
responders need this.
And it was
Well,
gonna be
and I
expensive.
love that even the simple things like allowing other people in the station to sleep when they're not on, and the calming voice for the adrenaline surge that I'm sure you guys are just gonna exhaust by the time you're,
Yeah.
you know.
And everything goes, what's nice about it are the pagers will be completely out. Everything will be the cell phones, which we've been able to move things over to the cell phones for the most part anyway. But yeah, everything's gonna change and finally
And all the
update.
others are doing
So-
the same, so, yeah.
Yeah, get the defibrillator every time those lights come on.
So
Yeah, serious.
Those things are,
Yeah, so-
have you been in there when that thing goes off?
No.
It's just all of a
Because this
sudden
is-
everything shoots on.
Because this is financial, it can't go on a consent agenda, but I would move to put it on our next voting session. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron.
awesome.
Thank you, sir.
Now we're gonna, Brody, this item, I think, is you request for draft proposal for RFP design.
Yes.
Go over where we're at with that.
Okay, so we're coming upon, as you know, West Davis Highway is starting to take shape. And they estimate that a final completion of construction may be the end of 2023. Maybe 2024, depending on if they have any delays. Around the intersection of Antelope and the highway, there is a lot of room for aesthetic improvements. And with each project, UDOT dedicates, I think it's like 0.75% or something like that of the project cost. They give that to the cities to do an aesthetic enhancement any way they want, really. They just kind of turn the money over to the city for that purpose. For this project, the Syracuse City will receive about $800,000 from UDOT to do aesthetic improvements. Now, when the interchange at Antelope is completed, the traffic projections would indicate that actually becomes the front door for most people to the city, rather than Antelope and on the west side coming from I-15. So the question is how do we want our front door to look? So in the packet, what we've done is we've got a draft RFP put together for a designer to help work with the council to come up with the design and the budget and actually construction drawings. The way it's structured right now, the process would be the designer would work with the city to come up with 3 different themes. And then from there, the city would select one of those themes as the one that they like the most. And then the designer would create 2 drawings from that chosen theme, which would include the material, the lighting, the landscaping, whatever we want to do there, and a budget. And then once the city chooses one, they would help, or they would actually put the construction drawings together and help us through the bidding process and construction as a consultant. But so the goals of tonight's discussion on this matter are twofold. One is to discuss any budgetary issues that you want to include, and then the other one is, are we okay to go out to RFP and get that started? I've also included the design from Corbin on our signage, kind of the theme that we've got put together through Corbin as a flavor that I would include in the RFP, so that the firms that want to put a proposal in kind of have an idea of what we've already kind of the ground we've already covered, that sort of thing. So like I said, we'll get $800,000. I'm not sure how far that's going to go. And I don't know that we even need to decide yet. We can always put more towards it if we feel we need to. But what you don't want to do is spend a bunch of money and it really doesn't look like we did. You want it to, this is going to be the front door of Syracuse for decades. And so you want it to really matter.
It's got to be impactful.
Yeah.
What is an initial design and concept that, like, what is that going to run us out of our 800,000? We don't know yet.
Well, we don't know because there's going to be some core landscaping that we have to cover. There's going to be opportunities for monument type something. I like the fact that what Corbin did for us could be incorporated and so that we don't have to like reinvent the wheel. So it could be a part of this. I don't think it would be the whole thing by any means. I mean, it's just, but as a part of it. And the biggest concern is that you do want to make sure that you, like Brody said, that you get something that makes an impact instead of, you've seen a lot of monument style things off an exit and you go, oh, that was just a big maintenance nightmare. We don't want to do that because increases our burden.
No fountains then.
Yeah, no.
Those
I
are
think
such a waste.
I would say, you know, I saw the Corbin packet in there, and I think that because we've gone through the great lengths to decide on this is where we're going, and we've spent some money and time on that. Is it, I don't see it in here, but I think, you know, maybe giving them the impression that it needs to integrate this in is almost too soft. I'd like to even say, like, whether it's signage or whether there's any kind of proposals for anything, this needs to be
To go
there.
in, yeah.
Because it's gonna already be tied into.
Yeah, similar looking, yeah.
Yeah.
throughout the city.
And then on here, it says 800K, the RFP allows them essentially to work with 800K. Is that kind of what we're saying?
Yes.
It's a proposal, yeah.
I'm wondering if we should,
So they're gonna submit their design fee to help us, or to come up with the design. We're gonna pay the designer. And our project budget that we're gonna,
for,
so that they have some
they need to
ballpark
give us an example of
understanding.
what they would do with 800K.
Yeah.
right? And what
Yeah.
is our budget for that, for the RFP?
So, I can't remember what we have actually in the
I
budget,
kind of remember.
but it's gonna run around
Corbin was.
probably, my estimate is around 50,000.
I was gonna say, because Corbin came in at like 30 something. right?
For the design.
50 for
aspect
the
of it.
design, for the
Yeah.
whole to.
For the whole plan of the
This
design.
is, yeah, this is more than just a feature. This is. a-
So that leaves
The
us
whole, all of it.
750 for the.
And we have kind of a complicated
Well, I'm
system of exits, so.
I'm kind of wondering if we should, some of the ways I've scoped out RFPs in the past has been to where I tell them this is your kind of budget proposal section, and then I want an extracurricular section of what you would do if you had additional budget to do something above and beyond. What would that look like if you were?
Like an
That's a
option.
good idea.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
talked
just
about
something to
that.
give them.
We did that with the
If we had
splash
extra
pad.
funds.
We said, here's our general budget, but we also want to know options to be added on. And they gave us some options. And we actually really liked what the options were, so we added them in. We also were able to find, and this is something we could do here too, like the second shade structure was paid for by wrap tax, and then another one was paid, another part of it was paid for by Lions Club. It helped us raise money, so we could find like, oh, we
Even if
might,
you tell us what that looks like, maybe we close the gap on
Right.
something else.
Yeah.
right, that's exactly, that's a very good option,
And we did it, when we did it with the splash pad, we did it after we had the designer on contract.
yeah.
Then we said, hey, what would you do if we added to?
And we can't touch the overpass, right? Is that my recollection?
The structure.
The
We cannot-
structure.
This is really just like periphery.
None of that
landscaping.
cool Ogden stuff that they have. on
History there is all the really cool stuff you see in the state from years ago where they had the metal structures
Yeah.
and stuff.
all that.
Those
Yeah,
are
they've,
awesome.
they've nixed all that, so that's not allowed anymore.
We can go around it. just
Yeah,
not on it.
Those seem like pricey anyway, so.
Yeah,
they
they
were.
were,
We'll get to-
right. And didn't you
we'll
say
get to-
somebody
They're worth
used
it. I
up all
love
the
looking at them.
funding, a few of those cities?
yeah,
Just that North Ogden side up there, that's got all those really nice
Slidell.
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty.
Yeah.
there's a few down in Provo that are really nice too, but they just overpaid and so it's not allowed.
Did they
anymore.
though? Because they're so pretty. You get what you pay for.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and UDOT used to put more money towards the aesthetic budget. If you look at the original Legacy Highway.
Yeah.
And how beautiful that is.
It is so pretty. Yeah.
It's also the reason why they no longer put that much. money
Yeah.
towards
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Is there also something in this RFP that will identify, I would think we should put like bonus points for drought responsive
Oh.
and
Landscaping.
maintenance intense.
You'll ask me.
Like, I'd love to see something
Very
that
good points.
keeps it, you know.
Especially
No
with
water
the
features.
Great Salt Lake,
Yeah,
being what we're connecting to and the drought,
Yeah.
that is the issues that we're
So-
seeing with that.
So let me clarify. So this RFP they're not actually going to give us any designs.
Hmm.
this is to choose the designer.
This is to see who would be the best designer for us.
Oh, so we're getting ahead of ourselves.
So they're
Yeah.
just going to give us a price and,
Of what they
and
could,
examples of projects they've done in the past
Okay.
and that sort of thing.
Just like what Corbin did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So that we can select our designer.
But
The
I still
designer
wanna
will
see
come back and
those.
work with.
Yeah.
us.
Those, I still want to see those, excuse me, like presented to us, because with a Corbin one, we got ones that were like completely irrelevant. or
Yeah.
This is not, like, don't give us examples of what you
Yeah,
did
something
in
we
downtown
wouldn't
New York,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or we got like, we designed Long Beach, okay. You know, but
Yeah.
this is not Long Beach.
Find us something else.
And I think that's really what we want to do too, because we want to see some of their history. It's like their portfolio book. If it looks like nothing like what we're going to be asking them to do, they might not be the right fit for us. But then again, we might see really cool things and go, we really like these people and, yeah.
Great.
So this is to pick the designer. We're gonna.
We gotta turn this pretty quick, right? I mean,
Yeah,
this is
we will.
gonna be,
Yeah, the timeline I have in there
It's a
is,
little-
is tight.
it's
Yeah.
tight.
I'm almost wondering if it's too tight, but since they're just submitting costs and a lot of the
What
stuff's
they
kind
think
of.
they can do it for. I think.
But we
They're gonna have
we
to
have-
get on it if they're gonna, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They'll have a couple weeks.
Cool.
and usually these type of firms, because there's so much of this in Utah, they already have something prepared. This is just modify it for your RFP.
Yeah.
They've submitted. a
Typical
few
bid
before.
situations.
Some of them forget to change the name of the city they're submitting it to.
Yeah.
That's fine.
We saw that before,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
Okay,
fine.
so I think we're good there.
Yep.
Let's move on to our planning items. Noah, if you would join us.
Hey, thanks for the pizza, Noah.
The first item on our planning items is application for zone change and preliminary plat for approval located at approximately 3348 west, 700 south, residential R1 to R3.
Okay, so this one we're calling the by the way rezone because of the last name of the owner. And he basically just wants to take this parcel of land and split it
Can you
into.
put that on for those who are
Is
online?
this kind of like what we did with that other property over off of 2700 south,
Sure.
over by Public Works?
Right.
That was the resemblance I got of it.
They need to do something to make it so they can.
Utilize the
Subdivided.
property, yeah. It seemed pretty straight up the same. I actually had to look at the address again to make sure. I'm like, didn't we just do this?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let me show you a map. Basically, there used to be a historic home here and the owner tore it down because it was in bad shape and he just wants to split it into. West Davis
Yeah.
corridor is gonna go right there. There's no access on the West Davis corridor, so it's not like a commercial piece or anything like that.
Yeah.
There is something else I wanted to kind of throw in there as maybe like a housekeeping item that I would recommend.
Yeah.
If you see, whenever we get these zoning applications, they're just dealing with their own property boundaries. And the zone boundaries are kind of funky here because of when, what was it, like 10 years ago when they did the project, they just rezoned what they had. And then when they went through the subdivision, there were some lots that were kind of half in, half out of the zone. So I'd recommend actually cleaning up these boundaries so they're all in the same subdivision. It's all a R3 subdivision, but like, you know, like this poor lot, it's like, well, I'm 25% R3 and, you know,
Yeah.
5% R1 over here. So I'd recommend actually just expanding that a little bit, just so it's all R3. It doesn't change their use or anything.
And it literally just fixes that problem for them, right? Just evening out the,
Yeah, and being the city, we have the authority to, you know, we're in charge of our zoning map, so we
Yeah.
can change that as long as it's noticed properly.
So all 6 of those residents though would get a.
yeah.
Yeah, here I'll show you, actually. So that's what he's proposing. And then this is actually what I think would be the best thing for the subdivision. There's actually a few others over here.
Over there on that side, yeah.
That guy has R3, A1 and R1.
All in one property.
For some reason, it's just kind of like a mapping error. So
I would think cleaning it up would be the best option.
That was the only kind of out of the ordinance. That makes sense. I mean,
It's kind of like what we did with that other one. It literally just seems like the same thing we just did with another property.
Okay, so I'm hearing consensus, so let's move on to our next item, which is recommendation for planning commit, or from planning commission, zone text amendment pertaining to walkout basements and stair encroachments.
so if you remember a few months ago, we had an applicant that came in and changed his zone just so he could put the rear, but you guys said, well, that's not really the root of the problem, but let's just help this guy and let's circle around and fix it. So that's what this is.
Us circling around fixing it.
Circling around and fixing it so that when somebody wants to do this again, the building official will measure from the house's foundation, not the stair. It doesn't count towards being in the setback. So you can see how there's just literally one little section, little sentence
Clerk.
added.
Yeah.
That says how to measure those in the future.
Any objections?
No.
No.
Okay, so I'm gonna move us on to the next one, which is Recommendation zone text amendment pertaining to commercial dog boarding.
Okay, so we, in our ordinance right now, we have a provision to allow commercial kennels. But that was like, if you imagine the old school, like breeding, outdoor breeding with like all these outdoor kennels, like all lined up, like dogs barking and, you know, puppies and for sale and things like that. So since, you know, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, when that was created in our ordinance, things have changed. Now we send our pets to these little doggy resorts when we go out of town. And so there's like this whole new land use that really wasn't anticipated, that we didn't have a provision for. And so we do have an applicant. He's in the audience if you guys want to choose to ask him any additional questions, but planning commission reviewed it. You know, the proposed text is in here. It would make an allowance for those kind of dog boarding facilities as long as they're indoor and that they are in a commercial zone. You have to have soundproof walls.
I was gonna say that 5 acres is not gonna block that noise.
So the 5 acre thing goes away, but they still have to
Be inside.
But they're
inside and have the minimum distance from residences.
Yeah,
So,
you know, a
one
barking
question.
dog.
I can't
hear my
dogs.
neighbor.
There's dogs in our neighborhood
Not
barking
when
all
it's
day
like-
long. I'm gonna go crazy.
It has a potential for nuisance, and so that's why there's some safeguards in here.
So the nuisance thing comes in mostly like at night, if you can hear them in there and there isn't anybody at the boarding facility, and a lot of boarding facilities don't have a night staff. They close them, yeah, and you can still hear them. That's,
One question I had, just relevant to terms, is since we used to consider a kennel something different and now it is considered different, would there be a use of a different term that would make it easier to separate what once was from what they're asking for now?
Yeah, so
And I don't know what that would be. I am not
Well,
a
the
dog
animal-
specialist,
the animal industry, there's breeding and there's boarding. And if you're running a boarding facility, then you shouldn't be having breeding
breeding.
dogs or breeding animals there. But like when it comes to horses, some places have a boarding facility, but they still breed studs at the same place, but they don't bark.
but so the relevance of my question would just be, do we change either the new term or the old term to something so that what we're
it's still-
changing is, it has a term for itself, and
Yeah,
we're not like allowing the
boarding
old.
kennel.
and the new.
Grandfathering in an old
Yeah,
name with
right.
a
yeah, if you
new
look at the
use.
language on here, we kind of create a new word, fully enclosed dog boarding facility.
Okay, so boarding.
Okay, that's a
but
kind of a long
it
tail
needs-
word.
But it
I
needs
mean,
like
can
that
you put a shorter-
explanation, like I would.
So the old way that we would call that was the commercial kennel. Right, so there's actually three kinds. So there's the residential kennel, those are the people that just want 3
Like
dogs.
individual, yeah,
And then there's what we used to call like the kennel,
right.
the, you know, line of breeding, almost like a breeding.
Breeding
kind of thing.
facility, yeah.
And then number 5, this is the new one that's the full and closed. And so it amends this part of our animal ordinance, but also go into the permitted uses in the commercial zone and make that a permitted use. So if somebody applied for it in a general commercial zone, that they would be able to.
I guess my point is that we call this a boarding facility different from a breeding facility or something that just recognizes.
For
that
boarding
it
purposes
is-
only. Mm,
Yeah, that it is.
Animal
a-
hotel.
Yeah,
there you go.
I
Well, no, because Seth just said, no, maybe not
Don't
animal
say what I said.
hotel.
You guys can call it whatever you want, but right now it's called fully enclosed dog boarding facility.
Yeah.
So does it
Maybe give a
limit to
definition of
dogs?
boarding in there with it.
Does it need to be limited to dogs?
Animal
Yeah,
people
yeah.
will skirt any rule they can.
Well,
Trust me, my neighbor
Seth's
just
got a
got
good
2
point.
goats.
What if we have
could this
people
be,
on
could
board
there be
there?
a cat facility?
Yeah.
It'd just be an animal boarding facility.
Well, I don't know if we're being discriminatory towards cats or anything. here, but-
That's not my point. I just, can we kill
don't
that
know if
bird
I've seen a
before-
cat.
Because
I
there's
hate that
horse
like,
boarding.
rewrite the cat zone.
Yeah, I just like, let's
But
not
that's-
start a
my
new-
cat for like
Shit, like you now have a,
I got it.
you also have horse boarding facilities and they're gonna need extra more space than that.
Fully enclosed temporary canine house
How,
bench.
Oh.
that's so bad.
So we can
Except
just-
now it's just for canines and you,
Oh, man, we're getting way off here.
Fully enclosed temporary canine house.
He's supposed to be keeping us on.
I like that
I
actually.
know, and I'm totally lost in that.
You're Paul, no?
All right, so,
Well, if you want me to take this back to the drawing board. and
No.
try to incorporate other-
no, I'm just trying to solve it for other things, because as soon as we do this, somebody's gonna say, well, we have
What about this animal?
a similar facility and we're gonna have to write it or amend the
Right.
ordinance.
Well, we have a gentleman that's anxious to open up a new business in the
I'm not
city.
trying to delay it.
Yeah.
The only thing so I'm okay with the ordinance as you proposed it here. The only thing I had a question about, and it was mostly from the packet, was that says provide a minimum play area of 100 square feet per dog, and then it kind of identifies that that's on the high end. And I don't want to like get in here and
That's a big space.
well, it says on average most are like 40 to 100, I think.
For a dog kennel, horses
The
only
play
have,
area,
Per dog.
like per dog play area. It just seems like that's a little big to me.
yeah.
And I don't know
Honestly,
anything about
I-
fetches or anything, but
But
That's so
weren't
much.
weren't they mentioning though that that's, you only have to have that per the number of dogs you're letting out to play
At one time,
So it doesn't have to encompass the whole.
Like a
capacity of
turnout?
The facility.
like
that's a
hourly
good point.
turnout. at a
Yeah.
I
time,
just don't
yeah.
want to like legislate that it has to be this massive facility for.
Yeah.
Right.
Like an indoor arena for dogs.
Yeah, and I don't
They
know
would have
how
a
that
great
works with
time.
you, but that's- seems-
Yeah.
It's gonna
Yeah.
be completely imposed and then, so in the childcare business, it says like 35 square foot for a child in the play area. I don't know why we consider like 100 square foot for a dog. Because I know that those childcare licensing regulations because I run the school.
Okay.
That was
So-
kind
They're
of
both about as
as
loud
far
as
as,
each other
like-
too.
And then for the sound, like, we have to picture this, like, everything enclosed, no dogs outside or in the play area even. So we are planning on putting like a dog, like a pool and play area, but we'll be inside the building, like, we're gonna make sure that the noise won't get out, like.
Okay.
A pool for the
This
dogs.
is
That is so.
700
fun.
south.
They
So
have-
this is
yeah.
actually
That's
out,
amazing.
So
I
we are
have visited
planning
it.
actually like,
this
like dog.
Okay.
place is actually on 700.
Yeah. So it's
And
like
then,
a
so with the
spa.
pool, because there is no pool in the area, like.
Just
we
before
only have,
2000,
like, a
yeah.
pool in Salt Lake.
Mm.
Because I do have dogs myself, like, but you have to take them to the, like, Salt Lake. If you want them to put it-
For the pool,
Yeah,
yeah, they don't have anything like that around
Yeah.
here.
but there
Okay.
are some other dog boarding facilities in.
Okay, I'm gonna
the
bring
one-
this back here, sir. Bring this back to the table. This is not,
What is the Bayview? Because Bayview does board. What is, did we look at
It's a-
Layton's and what Layton has?
I know that Royce, our planner, looked at lots of them. And there's even national associations that have,
so
like,
if you could tell
standards.
us that this is consistent with national standards,
This is.
then it might be simple to.
Yeah, that works.
For
That's,
those of
hey,
us who are not.
educated folks on it, yeah.
I'm not an
Okay.
expert on the subject matter.
So what did the
All right,
experts
so
say?
is, are
The
are
experts say that's
we
standard.
okay with moving forward with this?
The experts say it's standard.
I think you're right to change the name, so we're not pulling something from the past and saying it's completely undone. And if it's consistent, I think that you're good. As long as we're talking about, our biggest concern is that it becomes a nuisance.
The noise.
And if that isn't going to be an issue.
Okay,
then
all right, so we'll vote on this in our next meeting.
Sorry, I have a question.
Go ahead.
You do, so you do want to change the name of?
I think
this?
you want to have a unique name. I don't care what it is, just that,
Fetch works.
well, I think the point is that you don't want to be
I understand.
grandfathering, giving new rights to something that has an old name. That's the caution. So we just need
It's
to figure
relevant.
out, and it's probably out there somewhere in a real simple term. Call it a dog
Call it
spa
fetch.
ordinance or a dog.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't have to be reinventing the wheel, but we just have to call it something different than what we did before. Otherwise, what we did before now gets new rules.
Like we
Well,
literally
this is
just
calling-
made up a name we're still
Yeah.
talking about.
It was so-
Yeah, so I think it's
It
important.
sounds perfect. Makes
Okay.
sense. Logical.
All right, moving on to the next item, recommendations of planning or concerning sensitive overlay zone.
Okay, this one, the intent with this text amendment is to prevent some delays in some projects that we've seen. Currently, we have a whole area of the city that has some sensitive lands, and so we have a few more requirements that they have to go through before they develop. Basically, west of Bluff Road, the water table's a little bit higher and then more wetlands. And so right now we make all developments get a letter from the Army Corps of Engineers called the jurisdictional determination letter. And sometimes that delays the project. It could sometimes take months extra where they never had wetlands to start with. So what this amendment would do is say, if a developer can hire a third-party consultant that says no wetlands, and then there's a national inventory map that's common, you're shaking your head.
I don't agree with this.
Okay,
I know the flooding that happens there. I'm in that area and I don't think this is smart.
okay. So the national inventory, wetland inventory map is a database of all of the potential wetland areas in the country. And so if they can pass the two-step pass of, they have a trained third-party expert that comes and they analyze the site and they give a report that says no wetlands, and they go to this website that inventories all of the wetlands in the nation. If they pass those two things, then they don't have to get the letter from the Army Corps. It doesn't excuse them from requirements of the Clean Water Act. It doesn't take, it's just our process of the steps that they go through.
Okay, so I'm gonna refer to our new attorney. And the question is, if we, what's the potential here that we give ourselves a new regulation that streamlines a process? But what would happen if we later found out that
The flooding in its wetland.
that there was a problem? I mean, would we now suddenly take on a liability?
Yeah, I think there's a potential that we could take on some liability. It would definitely be something that I would have to look into, certainly before going forward with something like this, to make sure that we are complying federally with all of these requirements. But I do think there is the possibility that we would be liable if we're lifting these standards that we have in place.
So my
Well,
question is when you're looking at this, you're talking about two databases. Whereas the Army Corps, you normally send someone out to take a look at it and do a survey, and seeing it on a map as opposed to seeing the actual damage that happens in that area because of the flooding is a big difference.
Yeah, so I am not pushing or trying to sell this in any way. Just to clarify, this was actually something that our previous attorney put together, and we worked on it with him. So maybe you have a new take, and maybe it's worth time. There's kind of a lot to throw you into on the spot, Go ahead.
Let me give some examples of how this plays out, and I think, it might be worth considering. So we had our park maintenance facility. And we had the land that we were going to buy for the BMX park. And they were both required to be submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers for the jurisdiction determination. They rely on the third party engineer who does the study for us. So our engineer did the study, the site specific study, submits it to the Army Corps, and then they look at that study to determine.
So they're just reviewing the third party study.
Yeah.
So would this take that third party study out since it's coming off of a database?
Nope.
They still have to do that.
Yeah, this ordinance still requires them to do the third party study no matter what. But they don't have to get the Army Corps permit if the third party study says there's no wetlands there, and the Army Corps' own wetland database shows that there's no wetlands there already.
Where I have a challenge with this is that we know countless examples where databases and maps are
Don't
not up to
match.
date. I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
dealing with this in the next county with a personal issue where the maps 100 years back are not accurate, and the county recorder says, we know this. We
Yeah.
know that no one has found the actual GS markers in over 100 years, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so in this case, if somebody says, this map hasn't been updated in 20 years or 100 years, and then somebody comes back and challenges it and says, you never had somebody come out and look at this, and things have changed.
So just to be clear, that scenario could not ever happen, because you have to have a two-step. So the map, you're right, can be inaccurate. It's a national database. It's fluffy. You, under all circumstances, you have to have a third-party wetland delineation. You have to have, no matter what.
And that
Somebody will
stays in
be
the ordinance.
on the site, marching around in rubber boots and marking stuff.
Because it's not the Army Corps of
You're gonna need
Engineers
them
that's
those
doing the physical site survey,
And
right?
It's the engineer
It's
out
a
there,
third
third
party
party.
consultant.
They'll take the report and they'll say, yep, I agree, those are wetlands. You're gonna have to get a permit,
So
or,
is there
oh, I
specific
agree, there's no wetlands. no
engineers that they can pick from, or they can just hire like their friend that says, hey, this is
They're
what I-"
permit. They have to be like legit.
Like conflict of interest I'm asking about, like, can they hire someone that they would have a conflict, that it would look as a conflict of interest? As a
We-
third party engineer?
Yeah, for all the projects, there's actually a pretty small group of certified.
Engineer specific,
companies
yeah.
that
Here's,
would be able to pick
so
that out.
here's an example, like what the mayor was saying, in our case, when we did the park maintenance facility permit, the map was wrong, because the map, the last time it was updated, it was when UDOT did an assessment for the project, West Davis Highway project. And the highway itself just changed everything as far as where the flows go and everything. So we went in with our third party person. That engineer did the study, and their determination and the definition of a wetland is extremely like narrow. It's not, it has to have this type of soil and this type of, water and this type of, and so they do the study and then they said, these aren't wetlands. That's what our engineer said. But you have to submit that to the Army Corps to actually disturb it.
Yeah, just to be clear, that I am, I'm adamant about responsible planning, and I don't want any developer do some sketchy stuff and fill in a wetland or cut any corners. The city, we have a whole ordinance that's designed to prevent people from doing sketchy stuff in the wetlands and creating flooding and all of that stuff. That ordinance is still there, and we still want all of the developers to do the right things. The only thing that's changing is the process. If there's some scenarios where it's like very clear that there's no wetlands on there, we let them move forward.
Okay, we won't
So-
see those mounds on 2700, right?
So in the case, in the scenario that you were describing, Brody, where there's a contradiction between the third-party engineer study and the maps, we would then need in this scenario, we
Still
would
need
need the
Okay,
Army
that's
Corps
what
of
I'm-
Engineers to
Because the
resolve that conflict.
Okay,
However, if there is no conflict, then we're circumventing a bureaucratic step. for people.
It passes A and B.
Yeah.
We move on.
My opinion is, if our new attorney says, hey, this is not gonna come back to us, and it seems like there's protection built into the process, even if we say, hey, you don't have to submit to the Army Corps of Engineers, I'm,
The one thing that gives me pause is whenever you've got a legal process that's been established for a long time
mhm.
and you change it, if there's a hitch in that fairly soon after, you've got a reason that you could be challenged because you changed it and now we're
Yeah.
protesting. Whereas if we just left it and somebody says, well, this is the way it's been done for 40 years, then they'd have to say, well, why not? I mean, it's foolproof, it's safer. It may take a little longer, but if we are dealing with wetlands or the possibility of wetlands, people get so sticky about that. I'm hesitant to make a change, but I'm not, you know,
Yeah.
it's up to you.
And to maybe narrow the question for Brianne, on, in looking into that is, I don't know this, do you have currently,
Yeah.
do you have to have the Army Corps, do you have to submit to the Army Corps if the map shows that there's not a wetland on your property?
That's a good question.
And I was.
She's gonna have to look it up. probably.
I would think
We're gonna
no,
give her a
but
chance to look that up, but yeah,
I would think no, but, that's what we'd want to find.
because if the answer is no, then I think we've eliminated, we realize there's not a lot of problem.
And there's not necessarily liability.
Yeah.
because we have to do it anyway.
Well, the Army, I mean, I know that
It's
the
a
Army
good
Corps looks at that map right off the bat. I mean, they're referring to that same map.
Mr. Robert leaned forward, like to know something about this.
Oh, he's, yeah.
I love
Oh,
that.
He's
bring
a thing or two.
You know the lean forward.
I like that.
So last legislative session, they passed May 2022 on wetlands specific to this. Basically saying municipality may not designate or treat any land as wetlands unless Army Corps of Engineers or government has designated the land as wetland. Land use authority that issues a land use permit, so Syracuse, for our city, that affects land designated as wetlands by the United States. The federal government shall provide a copy of the land use permit to USGS so they can map it out on, or correct their map. So I think this came out because a lot of people, and we were part of that, is we just blanket, just everyone go there, and Army Corps is just getting inundated, and so the state.
Which is why it's slowed
made
down.
this.
so much. It takes
You might.
Yeah, I mean,
interpret it a little bit better. than
our-
I
Our
know.
projects got, we were waiting 6 to 8 months for them to even like.
That was a long time, yeah.
To even look at our.
I know, and then as soon as we come up with something else, nope, it's passed. There, next go. Thanks.
No, I'm not saying Mr. Roberts didn't do his due diligence. I just
Yeah,
not say that.
I'd rather err on the
Something I'd
safe
rather-
side.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
agree.
just hit you cold with something.
That's okay.
we're good at that. Welcome.
Just had to give you one.
Why by the
Yeah,
seat of our
no,
pants.
I think I'm up to the task. Thank you.
You are.
I-
Very happy.
If not, you got 2 whole weeks, so it's fine.
I will look into that and go back to you all with an answer.
I just would like to be safe. If there's any risk, I want to be safe because
It's good. Yeah, I agree. And
it's one of the new things I want to do, make sure we don't get us in trouble, so.
it's always bad to get sued.
I feel like it's great when you look at something on paper, but when you see it in like humanism, like on 2700, where those big mounds are that they're about to build, whatever they're building right along that arena. Oh, man, whoever thought that up was a genius.
Yeah, the intent here is not to try to like fast
Try to
track
hurt women's
development
space.
or do anything like that. It's just really to, like you
But
said.
8 months to hear back on a.
I know, that's.
That was a long time.
That's crazy.
And the guy waiting to hear over the BMX park, he called all the time. And
There's
then
nothing you can do. to
he
put-
pestered and I think he
That was
would
somewhat expedited.
send flowers, you know?
Okay, so I'm gonna
Yeah,
move us to a
one time.
point where I think we're gonna get some more information before we talk about this again.
Yep.
So we're not voting tonight. I'm gonna move us on. Sorry to put you on the spot.
We're not,
But we do that a lot.
we're nerve catchers.
Next item is Planning Commission Zone Text Amendment pertaining to rear setbacks on residential R2. And I feel like we kind of touched on this one already.
So this is also dealing with rear setbacks and side setbacks, but the one that we talked about already was just talking about stairways. This is not talking about stairways. This is talking about a subdivision that Ivory would like to build by Lacey Park. The current zoning is R2. And let me go to a table. This might explain it the best way. We'll pass it. So currently, the rear setback in an R2 is 30 feet. If you look here, here's all of the single family zones so you can get a reference. So the A1 and R1 and R2 are 30 feet rear setback. So what they're proposing is a 25-foot setback, which would go in, you know, in order of
They propose
So
20.
rear setback and not a
25.
This is wrong in the.
This is so they can build bigger homes and make more
package is
money.
20.
I'm with the planning commission on this one.
Oh, where it says, oh, yeah. E.
And that's what he was mentioning too. He's like, I'd prefer 20, but 25.
Sorry.
So what,
So
I
E
missed
is
that was a
wrong,
front setback we were talking
but
about.
the
Yeah.
very first part's right.
Okay, so just to be clear, it's 25.
They
feet.
want 20.
That's
It's in the table.
on the application, it says 25 feet. For some reason, that one says 20 in the red. My apologies. So it is 25, and the reasoning that they have given us is that they're wanting to build larger homes. So with the smaller building footprint, you know, that limits the homes, and they probably would just get the same amount of square footage that it's built up. Maybe they're gonna build up either way. A lot of times these homes are 2 stories nowadays, or 2 stories plus a basement. So planning commission looked at it and they actually are recommending to not approve this. Just because they felt if you're gonna build a big nice home, build on a big nice lot. But that would, you know, their current zoning is R2. And that just has minimum lot size. So they could lose some lots and build your bigger. That's not a popular proposition when you're talking about the developer to lose lots.
That's
So,
a them problem.
yeah, so, but and then the other issue is, you know, with the more shallow, the rear setback is you're gonna have those homes 10 feet closer together.
from back to
You're
back.
gonna lose 5 on each side.
Yeah, but you know, if you look at a R3, they're all the way down to 20. So as far as the realm of possibilities, they're clearly wanting to build a single family type development. They're just looking for a little bit more flexibility in the building envelope so they can have bigger homes or, you know, just a little more flexibility.
I feel like it's probably a challenge to, I feel like it's kind of a challenge for us to force yard space. I think there's some minimums, like we talk about, you have to have some minimum between fence and a pool. Well, sure, because, you know, there's some effect that has. But in your backyard, you know, to say your house is so big, it needs a bigger backyard. Is that really, I mean, we're
Smaller
allowing
backyard.
smaller homes because people say they don't want yards. Should we allow a bigger home without as much yard?
Yeah, it's kind of a two-edged sword because, you know, we've heard.
I mean, there are
everybody
some
likes
minimums.
nice big houses and nice big neighborhoods, but.
So here's my question with that.
the little
If you put in bigger houses, you're likely gonna have bigger families. Bigger families bring more vehicles. More vehicles causes issues with parking on the road and things like that. Talk about how many people have like 5 teenagers in their household. I know a couple of cops that got like 4 driving kids and they're lined the road with cars.
But that, what does that have to do with the backyard?
I'm just saying, the bigger the houses are in the same small lot size lots, you're gonna end up with parking issues eventually.
So another question I had was, so we're measuring from foundation to property line in this
Yeah.
instance, right? So what if they have a back patio that's roofed in, tied into the roof, back gable, that's protrudes all the way back out another 15, 20 feet,
That
and
considered,
it's well beyond the foundation?
Yeah, I
It's
think
not
there's
closed,
still
Where does
the,
that get measured?
So we have a separate section that's called
Yeah.
encroachments.
Okay, so
Rear
that
encroachment.
takes
We
into
do
account the fact that some people, because you see some of those that literally have the.
yeah,
back
you
patio.
still can't go to your back fence. You still got.
Does that still
6
leave you
foot
at
isn't
the-
our-
I don't
10,
think they have to
10.
go 25 feet from there.
That's an open space though, like it's
They're
not,
allowed
it's
to
just
encroach in
covered.
certain circumstances, like if it's a cantilever or a deck, or sometimes they.
Yeah,
even
that's
though
not-
they
But we've
cover-
got an encroachment setback.
Yeah, that's separate from
Mhm.
the estate.
No, I know, I'm just saying
They
at
wouldn't
that
be able to
point,
get
you gotta
closer.
account for the fact that now you're potentially 5 feet even closer. I guess you're 6 feet from the property line, you're saying, for encroachment.
I need to look it up. I
That's
believe
okay,
it depends
Yeah.
on the zone. There's a.
But
I
there
believe
still is
it's like a 10
something.
and 15 feet. Okay. That wouldn't change. They wouldn't be able to get any closer to the.
You
Really
can't
tough
go to
step
the
down.
point where you're,
Yeah, they'd just be able to build a smaller deck if they were really taking advantage of the.
You can't go to the point where your awning drips on your neighbor's property.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
not it.
check water into the- Yeah,
We dealt with that one too.
yeah, just.
I'm thinking in terms of, what these families want, and they want more house space. And I do agree with the gentleman who spoke earlier in that, it shouldn't be up to us to decide what you're allowed to, if you want a bigger home and not a bigger lot, like if it's me, I want a bigger home and less backyard. Because I'm not playing in the backyard at this stage. And there will be people, and probably the gentleman who spoke is probably somebody in a situation like mine, where it would be, I'd like enough home for my family to come and visit, but we're not going to be hanging out in the backyard playing ball. So I think that you probably have shut out a certain portion of the population that would be in a situation like that, who doesn't want to have a lot of children, but still wants more living space than they do want backyard. And I don't think that 5 feet is a breakable. I mean, to me, that's not a big issue, especially if you have somebody who really just says, I want a bigger family room than I want a swing set, because I don't need that swing set.
How did we establish the 30-foot rear setback?